A true gambler doesn't care about the pot, the value of the reward. The gambler loves the gamble, the thought of putting it all on the line, in love with the uncertainty of fate, but enthralled by the hope of unfolding the winning hand. Yet, it's always short-lived, always a wisp of pleasure blown away by the temptation of a riskier venture. Gambling fills the belly, but never truly satiates the hunger. So it was that I had just gotten back from Vegas. Came home $5,000 per, but still wanting to play the game. I knew I could get it back, but it was less about the money now, and more about the nature of the game. Roulette, blackjack, poker, the slots, all of it bored me to death. There had to be another game, another format to immerse myself in. I needed something different. I had heard of a place from a guy I had sat next to at a roulette table a couple of times. It was an old numbers house, the illegal abode of backwater gambling, before there were state lotteries and casinos all over the country. It had been converted to something different, a place where the stakes were high, the paid dirt golden, and the nature of the gamble beyond a dirty bankroller like myself had ever experienced. The latter is what drew me to an old cinder block outbuilding, with no windows. It was situated deep in the woods, next to a muddy, sluggish creek. The water was opaque, overgrown with algae, flowing only in spots not choked by vegetation. I turned right off of Clarksville Highway onto a long meandering gravel road with a canopy of large oak trees towering overhead on each side. It was the middle of the day, but as soon as I got on the road it looked like twilight. It seemed that the road would never end. Finally, I saw the building with a graded dirt parking lot spread out around the front and sides. Behind the building was the creek. Parked in front were 5 cars, one of them being a black El Camino, a car I hadn't seen in years. I parked my truck next to the El Camino, admiring the tan leather interior. "You like that, huh?" I heard someone speak. I looked over to my passenger's side window to see a short, middle-aged man with brown hair and a bushy blonde mustache. "Yeah, that's a slick car." "Yours?" I asked as I got out. "Yep. I've always loved the Camino. This was my dad's." He held out his hand. "My name is Brian." He had a firm grip, overdoing the "let me make sure you know I'm a man" kind of handshake. "Alex." "Well, Alex, the rest of the group is down by that nasty old creek. I couldn't stand down there long. Smells like shit. Must be sewage running into it or something. Appears no one is home. Doors locked. We've knocked, but no answer. I'm not waiting around that much longer. Ain't no gamble worth this bullshit, but I'll take you down to the creek where everyone else is waiting." We walked behind the building and down a gently sloping bank to a grassy outcrop in front of the creek. Standing there was 2 men and 1 woman. Before we got to the group, Brian turned around and spoke quietly. "Oh, I probably should tell you, no one else is revealing their name." Silly, I know. Now I regretted that I had told Brian if that was his real name, my real name. "Hey, another hand at the table." Nice, a bigger purse for me." The man turned from the creek and threw his hands up in the air like a referee signaling that the ball had successfully flown through the goal posts. He had on a leather jacket, jet black hair, and was wearing a pair of sunglasses. "Elvis wannabe," whispered the guy that called himself Brian. Elvis was a tool, but the other 2 seemed cool enough. The other man was a bigger man, dressed in denim overalls with a white t-shirt underneath. He just nodded his head as we approached. The woman, well, what can I say? She looked like a very short Madonna, the pop singer, not the mother of Jesus. "Hey, did you get an invitation?" she asked as we approached. I shrugged my shoulder, not understanding what she was talking about. "Some dude told me about this. I didn't personally get an invitation. Do I need one? It doesn't matter anyway. No one is here, and besides, I didn't get an invitation either. Just some guy at a poker table told me about it," Brian interrupted. At that moment the door was flung open, banging against the outer cinder block wall, rebounding back to the frame, laying slightly open. A shimmer of red light radiated from the inside. "Game on," said Elvis. I was apprehensive at first, but seeing that everyone else was headed towards the door, I followed. Inside was empty except for one thick round wooden table. It reminded me of the butcher block table my grandfather used to have. Around the table were 5 stout iron chairs. 5 electric chairs positioned around a butcher's block, not exactly a Vegas casino. The lights in the ceiling were red, but the hanging lamp above the table had a normal household bulb, with a warm, inviting hue. It was the only comforting aspect of that desolate, lonely interior I could appreciate. "Please sit down." The crackling phonographic voice rang out from a hidden intercom, the sound of which I was unable to locate precisely. We heard the doors shut and the clanging of chains from outside. I instinctively ran to the door and tried to push it open. It was locked tight. "What the hell?" stammered Madonna. With impatience the intercom demanded that we take our seats. I sat down at the first available chair, closest to the door. Brian in overalls, understanding my maneuver, grabbed the chairs to my left and right. Madonna and Elvis sat at the other end of the table, far from escape. There on the table was painted 5 white hand patterns, one in front of each seat, with a corresponding number from 1 to 5. Mine was number 1. "Place your hand on the table where indicated." We all complied except for Elvis. "Oh, I don't think so, asswipe." There was a high-pitched sound of pressurized air and a clanging of metal. Elvis screamed in pain, his sunglasses unable to hide the tears rolling down his cheeks. "Holy shit! Help me!" We all sprang out of our chairs as quick as we could, fearing that whatever happened to Elvis would happen to us. I walked over to Elvis. There were large spikes sticking out of both of his thighs. I saw the tops of the spikes open up and unfold 5 large spindles with tapered hooks at the ends. They looked like hellish little umbrellas, expanded skeletal frames without the colorful protective canopy. There was another shot of air and the spikes descended quickly back down into his thighs, the spindled hooks collapsing against the sides of his legs, piercing and grabbing. Elvis was hysterical. "Sit down. Place your hand on the table where indicated." We hesitated. A door we hadn't noticed in the sidewall, a door without a handle, was pushed open. A man dressed all in black, with a black ski mask, holding a shotgun, walked up to Overalls and shot him in the face. The head mushroomed, as his face was blown through his skull and onto the opposite wall. His body folded backward on top of the table. The assailant grabbed him by his overalls and slung him to the floor. He motioned for us to sit down. We joined Elvis at the table, who was still bawling and praying for help. "Place your hand on the table where indicated." We all placed our hands on the table. The terrible familiar sound of air pierced our ears as pneumatic valves clamped cuffs over our wrists, pinning us to the table. We all let out various expressions of pain. The stainless steel cuffs were built into the table, and as the clasps fell over our wrists, they also moved back into the table, cutting into our flesh and crushing fragile bones, ensuring that our left hands were not only trapped, but useless. Our host laid 2 stacks of cards down on the table. One was the standard 52 poker card stack. The other was bigger, faced with a crescent moon on a black background. "Number 1, draw a card from each stack," the intercom instructed. I drew a 10 of clubs and then grabbed the top card off the other stack. I turned it over. It was a picture of a leg. The intercom demanded the same from the rest of the group. This time Elvis was obedient. "Reveal. Lay your cards on the table." We all laid down our cards. Brian had an ace of hearts and a torso. Elvis, shaking, laid down his cards. It was a king of spades and a head. Madonna had a 2 of clubs and an eye. "Number 4, you lose." Madonna began screaming for help. I tried to move, to break away, but it was no use. There was a mechanical clicking and a spot in the ceiling opened up. A disc attached to a telescoping pole slowly descended and stopped eye level with Madonna. She ducked her head and plowed her forehead to the table, refusing to expose her face. From the side of the disc, 2 articulated robotic arms emerged with spinning drill bits. It looked both crude and refined. The arms extended and positioned the drills to her temples. The bits punctured and sunk into her temples, stopping halfway, lifting her struggling head up to the disc. Faster than the mind could perceive, 2 spikes were shoved through her eyes. With its work done, the disc released Madonna and ascended back to the ceiling. Her head fell to the table. "Number 5, draw." It was Elvis's turn, but he was incoherent. The shock and loss of blood had made him less than attentive. A countdown began, starting from 10. Elvis was still unresponsive. His glasses had slid off his face. His eyes were glazed over, and he was staring down at the table. I wanted to say something, but then again I didn't. The countdown ended. The disc descended, moved closer to Elvis. An arm with a saw blade extended perpendicular to the disc. The blade was spinning fast and turning red with heat. The arm moved towards Elvis's neck, severing his head from his body, and cauterizing the wound. It was a clean, fast decapitation. Number 5 disqualified. It was only me and Brian. The man in the ski mask went back through the sidewall door. He was gone for quite a while. Brian and I sat there in silence. After a while, Brian broke the silence. "I prefer blackjack." He grinned. I chuckled. The man with the ski mask came back through the door with a briefcase. He laid it on the table and opened it up. It was filled with money. $100,000, the intercom announced. The clamps on our hands released. Someone unlocked the exit door and swung it open. We were free. Play or go. Fold and flee or stay and gamble. The choice is yours without consequence. We stared at each other, unable to move, stuck with indecision. "I'll raise you in El Camino." "I can't match it." "Do you really want an old Ford truck?" "It's not about the pot, it's all about the gamble." Unfortunately, I understood exactly what he meant. That day I won an El Camino. I didn't take it home though. I'd be a dumbass to drive a missing man's El Camino around town. It's the principle that matters. Yeah, and I know I'm going to get the same damn question I always get when I tell this story. Why didn't you call the police? Because I'm a true gambler.